Om Shri Sai Ram Upanishad Vahini by Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Chapter 8 Kena Upanishad. The Kena Upanishad is ascribed to Samaveda and its Talavakra branch, and hence the Upanishad is also referred to as Talavakra Upanishad. The first verse of this first section of this Upanishad starts with the word Kena, and hence it is called by the name Kena Upanishad. Kenestam patati paristam manahe Kena prana pratmaha pretya yuktaha Kenestyan bachami man vedanti chakshuhu shrotam kau devyo nakti. The first verse of the first section of Kena Upanishad, meaning who impels the mind to alight on its object, enjoyed by whom does the vital force proceed to function, at whose behest do men utter speech, what intelligence indeed directs the eyes and the ears, the ear, skin, eye, tongue, nose, these Pancha Indriyas or the five senses are able to cognize sound, touch, form, taste and smell respectively. Objects of knowledge of this objective world are cognized through these five only. The world is experienced through these instruments which stand intermediate between the knower and the knowable. The inner capacity to understand objects is named as mind or manas. The manas moves out through the jnana indriyas or the senses of knowledge and attaches itself with the objects, and at that time, by that very occurrence, the manas assumes the form of that object. This inclination of mind changing or modifying or assuming into various objects is called a vritti or function. The manas is a chetana or inanimate, and so its vikaras, change or modifications are also a chetana. A wooden doll has only the property of wood. A sugar doll has just the property of sugar. However, we believe that knowledge of external objects comes from our mind, an inanimate inner instrument, so it cannot achieve the jnana knowledge of chetana or superconsciousness. Just as the unintelligent chariot is directed by a charioteer, there must be an entity of consciousness who is seated and directs the karma indriyas or the senses of action and jnana indriyas or the senses of knowledge. Isn't it? There is a motive force that activates the antakarana or the inner instrument, the karma indriyas or the senses of action, the jnana indriyas or the senses of knowledge, the five pranas. That force is devam, pure consciousness. The question quoted above implies that this motive force, who is the real karta or the performer or doer, is distinct from the indriyas or senses. What is the driving force of these senses? Naturally, therefore, the motivator of the entire group of senses must be distinct from the manas too, is it not? Those who seek to know the eternal, convinced that all acts and activities are ephemeral, will not try to inquire about the activities of body and mind. They will concentrate to know about the eternal only. That eternal entity is pure and agitation-less, and so it is devoid of any kind of self-motivation, urge, and so on. Therefore, it does not order the senses or the mind for this purpose or that. Then the doubt arises, do the manas, the prana, the vak or the speech, the eye, the ear, etc. carry out their respective functions prompted by the law of cause and effect, or do they act so moved by the wish of the Chetana force. The ear has the capacity to know sound. The eye is endowed with the skill to know and distinguish form. The other senses are also similarly equipped. When the manas inclines towards the objects through any one of the senses, you acquire knowledge about them. The five senses and the manas therefore all appear as instruments of knowledge. Though they are all achetana or inert or inanimate, how could they manage to perform this chetana or intelligent function? Well, the answer is due to their sanidhya or nearness, closeness or proximity of the Atma, which is nityam or changeless, ashantam, non-attached, asanhatam or non-attached, and sarvantaram or all-pervasive. They, mind, senses, etc., are capable to act as instruments of knowledge. However, they are incapable of performing all this without the energy or spirit of Atma. The sun illumines the world and makes it active in 1,000 ways, says the Shrutis. So too, this Upanishad teaches that the Atma, by its tejas or energy or spirit, activates and illumines the entire Jagat, universe or cosmos. All instruments of knowledge are activated by the Atma. It is the one and same uninterrupted supply of electricity that enables machines to function and carry out operations like cutting, printing, etc. However, we look at it as at different tasks and say that machine is printing, machine is doing this job or that job, etc., isn't it? But the electric current is the motivator of the movement, the machine of the machine. So too, the Atmic Tejas is the ear behind the ear, the eye behind the eye, that is the activating current for the functioning of all the senses and the mind. The wonder is, the Tejas, energy or spirit of the Atma, is Nishkriyam or actionless and Nirveshasham or undiscriminating. Since it is Nishkriyam, it does not get anything done with the manas or the senses, but they are capable of performing their functions by their sanidhya of the Atma. The rays of the sun illuminate and activate all the objects, but the sun rays are Nishkriyam. Similarly, the undiscriminating energy or spirit of the Atma is manifested through the activities of the senses like hearing and so on. This most mystical and esoteric teaching was given by Varuna to his son Bhrigu. The eye, when illumined by the Tejas, energy or spirit of the Atma, is able to grasp a form which is its sphere of action, but it can never hope to illumine the Atma, which is self-luminous. The lamp illumines objects, but the objects cannot in turn illumine the lamp. The Vak can describe or denote only such things that possess attributes like name, form, guna, kriya, action or deed, etc. How can it describe or define that which has no attributes, no name, no form, no characteristic, no action, no distinction? The Paramatma, it cannot. You cannot describe sweetness or similar tastes by means of words. The Atma is not a subject for description. The Achatyana Manas cannot become Vignata, one who understands or knows. The Achetana Manas cannot become Vignata, the one who understands or knows, the one with Chetana. So, Manas cannot grasp the spirit of the Atma. There is no knower who can know the knower at all. Hence, he is beyond the knowable. Brahman is Vijnana, assimilated knowledge itself. So it can never be known. When everything is known through Vijnana, so how come through Vijnana can be attained? Not possible. The lamp will not crave for its own light or another lamp to manifest its light. It sheds light on other objects. It cannot shed light on its own light. So too, you are light, you are Atma. One should realize the Atma, says Shruti. The Atma in you is of the same nature as the Atma in all beings. Since there is no second to Atma, it has nothing to seek or reject. The real nature of Atma is explained through Shastras, that which cannot be illumined by words or speech or by the senses, that which illumines the word and speech and all the senses, that is Brahman or Atma. The first khanda of this Upanishad makes clear that Brahman is neither here, one that cannot be rejected, nor Upadeya, one that can be sought. So, for those who claim saying, I have seen Brahman or I have known Brahman, it is yet a subject for further investigation and inquiry. They have not reached the final stage, for theirs is not authentic or true jnana. There is but a delusion. The Atma of the knower itself is the very Brahman. That is the undoubted verdict of Vedanta, is it not? Fire cannot burn itself. Likewise, how can Atma know Atma? How can the knower know himself? Therefore, the statement, I have known Brahman, is an indication of delusion, not of real knowledge. People make such statement because Brahman has various great cognizable forms that are worthy of worship. Though Brahman has no specific form, various names and forms can be assigned to it. By itself, the absolute reality, that is Brahman, has no sound or smell or taste or touch or form. It is immutable. It is ever existing. Whatever gets demonstrated by any given activity of the senses, mind, etc., that itself becomes its form. By whatever subject matter, the Shastras try to demonstrate the Brahman, that itself becomes its form, Chaitanya or pure consciousness, which manifests through these upadhis or manifesting mediums, is Brahman itself. Chaitanya by itself is non-attached, but yet, when associated with objects like the physical body, it gives the impression that it is attached. From the fact that when the waters of the lake are agitated, the image of the sun on the water shakes, you cannot infer that the sun, which is remote and afar in the sky, also shakes. The sun and the sheet of water are unrelated. No relationship can be positioned between these two. Similarly, when the body undergoes growth, decay, destruction, etc., it gives the impression that the Atma too is so affected. But the Atma is unaffected. Brahman is beyond the reach of those who seek to know it by the use of buddhi or intellectual. It can be reached by those who do not try to know it by the use of buddhi. It is beyond the reach of buddhi. It is only to be experienced. The ultimate state of Brahma Jnanam is the end of all inquiry, all search, actual realization. Sakshatkaram is the fruition thereof. This highest stage is reached in samadhi or deep state of absorption. Though of course the preliminary steps of Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana are concerned with buddhi or intellect, one will acquire the Satya Swarupa, one's true reality, if he understands the nature of the Atma in this very birth itself. If he does not, then it is a big loss, no doubt. The Jnani recognizes in every being and every object the principle of the all-pervading Atma, and when he leaves the world, he becomes free from birth and death. Brahma Jnanam, or the knowledge of the Absolute, is the heritage of man. He is entitled to it if he is aware of this, and if by his efforts he achieves the jnana of Brahman, adopting the above mentioned methods, then verily his career in this world is worthwhile. Otherwise, it is all a waste. The self-effulgent Parabrahman or Atma flashes like a streak of lightning. In a second, it will reveal its brilliance and splendor, which is its divine form. It is impossible to grasp its full majesty, since the manas or mind is the upadhi or the manifesting medium of the Brahman. It seems to be very close to the Brahman and makes you believe that it attains it. It is incapable of doing so. Since it is closest all the time, the sadhaka imagines that his mind has realized the Atma. Therefore, he yearns for the Sakshatkaram again and again. All this, of course, is good, for it fosters the contemplation on Brahman. For the Brahmagyani or the enlightened one, the dualities of dharma and adharma, of merit and demerit, are non-existent. Dharmic life offers the celestial lokas after death, and adharmic life leads one to the dark lokas. But both are bondages for the aspiring sadhaka, whose eye is on liberation. Upanishads are named so as they aid the sadhaka or spiritual aspirant to snap the strings that bind the heart to the objective world, thereby destroying the avidya or ignorance, and takes him very close to the Brahman. To attain the Brahmagyanam, tapas or austerity, dhamma, self-control of the senses, Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, and such activities are all of good help. Brahmagyanam has Vedas as its angas or limbs and Satya as its location. This Upanishad gives all seekers the Upadesham, teachings of Brahmagyanam. It deals with Brahman, which is Satyam or absolute existence, Jnanam, consciousness, and Anantam or undivided. Jai Sai Ram.
सा ईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ सा ईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ सा ईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ